Hey, it's Wednesday, April 14th. We just got done bonding and talking. Apparently, it's something that humans do. I've been hearing about. We were talking about purple kids and how awful teachers are. None in particular that we're going to talk about right now, but there may have been 15 or 20. Let's see. Okay. There we go. Blue sheets. I've got my one kid working on blue sheet. I have no one that still owes me this. Well, that's a lie. I have several kids who still owe me this, but they're all virtual and I can't make them do it. Yeah. I have a bunch of virtual kids who just not turn stuff in. If they're not here, I can't make them turn it in. So those of you who come in person, I can make you not fail my class. But those of you who are virtual, I can't force you to pass. That's what we can do. Cover that part. Did we have anybody who, so as of now, so we have our listing over there. We still have Lave, who is at 20 points. I will give you the opportunity for those of you who want to try and beat it. We can do that here in a moment. And sparingly, we do have kids. So those of you watching video, I have to pause for a moment and then we'll come back to this one so we can have some kids try and beat it. And I'll update you here in a second. And home children, we're back and we did have a kid break it. We now have a tie for second place. Congratulations to Jermaine, who has now moved 6th period into a tie for second place at 14 seconds. Go him. Let's see. Now let's go through from 1 to 4. You guys are going to get ready to read. Let's see, we did that. The speedy things for 4. So the reason why I let you guys eat up some of our time with our talking today, whatever we don't get done, it just becomes homework for you, which just becomes reading, which is not the end of the world because, again, I have audiobook. So if you don't want to have to read on your own, you can just use my audiobook. I am planning on reading with you today. So we're going to be reading here for a chunk until we get to a certain point. Let's see. Let's get to where we were before. We have our character people we went through. We have our greasers, socias, the red Corvair, which was the socias who jumped out and tried to beat them up. We're going to get to the knives and stabbing Ellie in a moment. Busted pop model. We're going to get to the busted pop model again because they're going to try and bust another one and stab another kid. They do a lot of stabbing in this book. We're going to come back to the empty neighborhood lot because there's a big scene that happens there. Let's see, we had them again. We got to chapter 2, which is where they went and hung out at the Steel Cools, the drive-in restaurants. Which greasers went to the drive-in movie? And then what greaser do they meet while they're there? Two-bit. What girls do they meet while they're there? Nicely done remembering Marcia's name. Ooh. Why are Marcia and Cherry not with their boyfriends? Because they were drunk. And we're going to deal more with that coming up. Yeah, distracting at the moment. That was 2-bit showing up. He talked about the fact that we get into fights about weapons, the chains, and the guns, the heaters, which the heater is going to come back also. Ooh, who told the story about Johnny getting beat up and the blue Mustang was who showed up. Who do we find out is in the blue Mustang? Bob. Who is Bob? There you go. And that's also this chapter we have coming up now. All of this is going to come together here in just a second. So that's the blue Mustang and all of them. Then we got to chapter 3. This is you guys that left off on page 46. Page 46. Who we got to? This was where we talked about the socias like the Beatles. And the greasers like Elvis Presley, which is where I wore my Elvis Presley tie today. So I was making the connection on that one. And then, yes, dude. Would he be still alive? If he hadn't died from drugs, probably. I mean, he would be in his 70s or 80s, but he did still. Yeah, it'd be nice.
I thought didn't he die on the toilet?
That's the rumor from a drug overdose. That's where he happened to be sitting when his heart exploded. They make fun of the socias because they have the fetal haircut. They're going to bust the bottle, do the stabby thing, and then that's roughly what we got. All right. So let's see. Cherry. The boys show up, take Cherry and Marcia, or the boys being the socias show up, take Cherry and Marcia away with them. Before Cherry leaves, she drops a bombshell on Ponyboy and says she has a crush on somebody. There you go. And the fact that even though she's dating Bob and flirting with Ponyboy, she's like, I also have a huge crush on the bad boy with the staff. So she is a player, if you want to go that way. All right. She just has a crush. I'm not sure that qualifies as being a player. So, wow, you guys seem all judgy all of a sudden. Oh, and we are on halfway down 46. Where we had just left off with, she left me standing there with my mouth dropped open and the blue Mustang vroomed off. So like 4 little indents down. Page 46, for those of you following at home, that's where we're picking up. We walked on home, mostly in silence. I wanted to ask Johnny if those were the same socias that had beaten him up. Were they the same socias that beat him up? Yes, they were. But I didn't mention this. Johnny never talked about it. We never said anything. Well, those were two good-looking girls if I ever saw any. Two that yawned as we sat down on the curb at the vacant lot. He took a piece of paper out of his pocket and tore it up. What was that? Marcia's number. Probably a phony one, too. I must have been out of my mind to ask for it. I think I'm a little soused. Oh, so he had been drinking. Too bad he was smart. He knew the score. Y'all going home? He asked. Not right now. I wanted to have another smoke and watch the stars. I had to be in by 12, but I figured I had plenty of time. I don't know why I handed you that busted bottle, Two-Bit said, getting to his feet. You'd never use it. Maybe I would have. Where are you headed? I'm going to go play a little snooker, hunt up a poker game, maybe get rip-roaring drunk. I don't know. See y'all tomorrow. Oh, real quick, snooker. I had to look it up. It's a game a lot like pool, but your goal is not to actually put the ball into the pocket. It's like to make it do a weird bouncy thing, and you play with all these. It's really weird. It's a game that's made for gambling and betting. So apparently he's going to go out and drink and gamble. You know,
You the pool table?
good choices. There you go. Johnny and I stretched out on our backs and looked. So I put that up because that's for hanging out in the empty lot down the street. Stretched out on our backs and looked at the stars. I was freezing. It was a cold night, and all I had was that sweatshirt. I could watch the stars in sub-zero weather. I saw Johnny's cigarette glowing in the dark and wondered vaguely what it was like inside a burning ember. It was because we're greasers, Johnny said, and I knew he was talking about Cherry. We could have hurt her reputation. I reckon, I said, wondering if I ought to tell Johnny what she said about Dallas. Man, that was a tough car. Mustangs are tough. Big time socials, all right, I said, a nervous bitterness growing inside me. And it wasn't fair, the socials to have everything. We were as good as they were. It wasn't our fault we were greasers. We couldn't just take it or leave it like Two-Bit, or ignore it and love life anyway, like Soda Pop, or harden myself beyond caring, like Dally, or actually enjoy it, like Tim Shepard. I felt the tension growing inside me. I knew something had to happen or I would explode. I can't take much more, Johnny spoke my own feelings. I'll kill myself or something. Hey, don't, I said, sitting up in alarm. You can't kill yourself, Johnny. Well, I won't, but I got to do something. And it seems like there's got to be some place without greasers or socias, with just people, plain, ordinary people. Out of the big towns, I said, lying back down. In the country? In the country. And I loved the country. I wanted to be out of towns and away from excitement. I only wanted to lie on my back under a tree, read a book, draw a picture, not worry about being jumped or carrying a blade or ending up married to some scatterbrained broad with no sense. The country would be like that, I thought dreamily. I'd have a yeller cur dog like I used to, and Soda Pop could get Mickey Mouse back and ride and all the rodeos he wanted to, and Derry would lose that cold, hard look and be like he used to be 8 months ago before Mom and Dad were killed. Since I was dreaming, I brought Mom and Dad back to life. Mom would bake some chocolate cakes, and Dad would drive the pickup out early to feed the cattle. He'd slap Derry on the shack and tell him he was getting to be a man, a regular chip off the block. They'd be as close as they used to be. Maybe Johnny could come and live with us, and the gang can come out on weekends. Maybe Dallas would see that there was some good in the world after all, and Mom would talk to him and make him grin in spite of himself. You've got quite a mom, Dally used to say. She knows the score. She could talk to Dallas and kept him from getting into a lot of trouble. My mother was golden and beautiful. Pony boy, Johnny was shaking me. Hey, Pony, wake up! By the way, that whole section was just a big flashback. He was trying to think of his happy place. His happy place was out in the country. I sat up shivering. The stars had moved. Oh, Glory, what time is it? I don't know. I went to sleep too, listening to you rattle on and on. You better get home. I think I'll stay out here all night. Johnny's parents didn't care if he came home or not. Okay. I yawned. Oh, God, it's cold. If you get cold or something, come on over to our house. Okay. I ran home, trembling at the thought of facing Derry. The porch light was on. Maybe they were asleep and I could sneak in, I thought. I peeked in the window. Soda Pop was stretched out on the sofa, sound asleep. But Derry was in the armchair under the lamp, reading the newspaper. I gulped, opened the door softly. Derry looked up from his paper. He was on his feet in a second. I stood there chewing on my fingernail. Where the heck have you been? You know what time it is? He was madder than I'd seen him in a long time. I shook my head wordlessly. It's 2 a.m, kiddo. Another hour, and I would have had the police out after you. Where were you, pony boy? His voice was rising. Where in the almighty universe were you? It sounded dumb, even to me, when I stammered, I went to sleep in the lot. You what? He was shouting. Soda Pop sat up, rubbed his eyes. Hey, pony boy, he said sleepily. Where you been? I didn't mean to, I pleaded to Derry. I was talking to Johnny, and we both just kind of dropped off. I reckon it never occurred to you that your brothers might be worrying their heads off and afraid to call the police because something like that can get you two thrown in a boys' home so quick it'd make your head spin. And you were asleep in the lot? Pony boy, what on earth is the matter with you? Can't you use your head? You haven't even got a coat on. I felt hot tears of anger and frustration rising. I said I didn't mean to. Didn't mean to, Derry shouted. I almost shook. I didn't think. I forgot. That's all I hear out of you. Can't you think of anything? Hey, Derry, Soda Pop began. But Derry turned on him. You keep your trap shut. I'm sick and tired of hearing you stick up for him. You should never yell at Soda. Nobody should ever holler at my brother. I exploded. You don't yell at him, I shouted. Derry wheeled around and slapped me so hard it knocked me against the door. Suddenly, it was deathly quiet. We had all frozen. Nobody in my family had ever hit me. Nobody. Soda was wide-eyed. Derry looked at the palm of his own hand where it had turned red and then looked back at me. His eyes were huge. Pony boy? I turned and ran out the door and down the street as fast as I could. Derry screamed, Pony! No, I didn't mean to! But I was at the lot by then and pretended I couldn't hear. I was running away. It was plain to me that Derry didn't want me around, and I wouldn't stay if he did. He wasn't ever going to hit me again. Johnny, I called, and started when he rolled over and jumped up almost under my feet. Come on, Johnny, we're running away. Johnny asked no questions. We ran for several blocks until we were out of breath. Then we walked. I was crying by then. I finally just sat down on the curb and cried, burying my face in my arms. Johnny sat down beside me, one hand on my shoulder. Easy, pony boy, he said softly. We'll be okay. I finally calmed down and wiped my eyes on my bare arm. My breath was coming in quivering sobs. You got a cigarette? He handed me one and struck a match. Johnny, I'm scared. Well, don't be. You're scaring me. Come on, what happened? I've never seen you bawl like that. I don't very often. It was Derry. He hit me. I don't know what happened, but I couldn't take him hollering at me and hitting me too. I don't know. I mean, sometimes we get along okay. Then all of a sudden he blows up on me or else is nagging at me all the time. He didn't used to be like that. We used to get along okay. Poor mom and dad died. Now he just can't stand me. I think I like it better when the old man's hitting me, Johnny sighed. At least then I know he knows who I am. If I walk in the house, nobody says anything. I walk out, nobody says anything. I stay away all night, nobody notices. At least you got Soda. I ain't got nobody. Gee, I said, startled out of my misery. You got the whole gang. Dally didn't slug you tonight because you're the pet. I mean, golly, Johnny, you got the whole gang. It ain't the same as having your own folks care about you, Johnny says simply. It just ain't the same. I was beginning to relax and wonder if running away was such a great idea. I was sleepy, freezing to death, and I wanted to be home in bed, safe and warm under the covers with Soda's arm across me. I decided I'd go home and just not speak to Derry. It was my house as much as Derry's, and if he wanted to pretend I wasn't alive, it was just fine with me. He couldn't stop me from living in my own house. Let's walk to the park and back. Then maybe I'll be cooled off enough to go home. Okay, Johnny said easily. Okay. Things gotta get better, I figured. They couldn't get worse. Well, I was wrong. That he is. Chapter 4. I'm not done reading to you yet. We've got this is the exciting part.
Oh.
Chapter 4, page 53. The park, real quick, we're going to get into this next part. They're going to talk about a big water fountain in a park. They don't mean the water fountain that we have here in the hallways. They're talking about this kind of water fountain. We have like the big splashy kind of thing. That's the water fountain they're talking about.
Like in a mall?
Yeah, so like in a mall. And they're also going to refer to Johnny's jeans jacket several times. If you don't know what a jeans jacket is, this is what they're talking about. Johnny's probably doesn't have the sparkles on it as much, but the other part, like that's what he's wearing. So that's going to be referring to that one. All right, back to this thing. Chapter 4. The park was about 2 blocks square with a fountain in the middle and a small swimming pool for the little kids. The pool was empty now in the fall, but the fountain was going merrily. Tall elm trees made the park shadowy and dark. It would have been a good hangout, but I don't know. We preferred our vacant lot, and the shepherd outfit liked the alleys down by the tracks, so the park was left to lovers and little kids. Nobody was around at 2:30 in the morning. That was a good place to relax and cool off. I couldn't have gotten much cooler without turning into a popsicle. Johnny snapped up his jeans jacket and flipped up the collar. You about to freeze to death, Pony? You ain't a whoopin', I said, rubbing my bare arms between drags and my cigarette. I started to say something about the film of ice developing on the outer edges of the fountain when a sudden blast from a car horn made us both jump. The blue Mustang was circling the park slowly. Johnny swore under his breath, and I muttered, "What do they want? This is our territory. What are Socias doing this far east?" Johnny shook his head. I don't know, but I bet they're looking for us. We picked up their girls. Oh, glory, I said with a groan. This is all I need to top off a perfect night. I took one last drag on my weed and ground the stub under my heel. Again, weed here is not marijuana. It just means tobacco, a cigarette. You want to run for it? It's too late now, Johnny said. Here they come. 5 Socias were coming straight at us. And from the way they were staggering, I figured they were reeling pickled. That scared me. A cool, deadly bluff could sometimes shake them off, but not if they outnumbered you 5-2 and were drunk. Johnny's hand went to his back pocket, and I remembered the switchblade. I wished for that broken bottle, and I'd sure show them I could use it if I had to. Johnny was scared to death. I mean it. He was as white as a ghost, and his eyes were wild looking, like the eyes of an animal in a trap. We backed against the fountain, and the Socias surrounded us. They smelled so heavily of whiskey and English leather, I almost choked. I wished desperately that Derry and Soda would come along hunting for me. The 4 of us could handle them easily, but no one was around. And I knew Johnny and I were going to have to fight it out alone. Johnny had a blank, tough look on his face. You'd have to know him to see the panic in his eyes. I stared at the Socias coolly. Maybe they could scare us to death, but we'd never let them have the satisfaction of knowing it. It was Randy and Bob and 3 other Socias, and they recognized us. I knew Johnny recognized them. He was watching the moonlight glint off Bob's rings with huge eyes. Hey, what do you know? Bob said a little unsteadily. Here's the little greasers that picked up our girls. Hey, greasers. You're out of your territory, Johnny warned in a low voice. You better watch it. Randy swore at us and stepped in closer. Bob was eyeing Johnny. "No, pal, you're the ones who better watch it. Next time you want a broad, pick up your own kind." Dirt. I was getting mad. I was hating him enough to lose my head. "You know what a greaser is?" Bob asked. "White trash with long hair." I felt the blood draining from my face. I'd been cussed out and sworn at, but nothing ever hit me like that did. Johnny Cake made a kind of gasp, and his eyes were smoldering. "See it, Taylor?" "You know what a soch is?" I said, my voice shaking with rage. "White trash with Mustangs and Madras." And then, because I couldn't think of anything bad enough to call him, I spit at him. Bob shook his head, smiling slowly. "You could use a bath, greaser, and a good working over, and we've got all night to do it. Give the kid a bath, David." I ducked and tried to run for it, but the soch caught my arm, twisted it behind my back, shoved my face into the fountain. I fought, but the hand at the back of my neck was strong, and I had to hold my breath. I'm dying, I thought, and wondered what was happening to Johnny. I couldn't hold my breath any longer. I fought again desperately, but only sucked in water. "I'm drowning," I thought. "They've gone too far." A red haze filled my mind, and I slowly relaxed. The next thing I knew, I was lying on the pavement beside the fountain, coughing water and gasping. I lay there weakly, breathing in air and spitting out water. The wind blasted through my soaked sweatshirt and dripping hair. My teeth chattered unceasingly, and I couldn't stop them. I finally pushed myself up and leaned back against the fountain, the water running down my face. Then I saw Johnny. He was sitting next to me, one elbow on his knee, staring straight ahead. He was a strange greenish white, and his eyes were huger than I'd ever seen him. "I killed him," he said slowly. "I killed that boy." Bob, the handsome soch, was lying there in the moonlight. Look who's on? Blaze. You need it for a second. In the moonlight, doubled up and still, a dark pool was growing from me, spreading slowly over the blue-white cement. I looked at Johnny's hand. He was clutching his switchblade, and it was dark to the hilt. My stomach gave a violent jump, and my blood turned icy. "Johnny," I managed to say, fighting the dizziness, "I think I'm going to be sick." "Go ahead," he said in the same steady voice. "I won't look at you." I turned my head and was quietly sick for a minute. Then I leaned back and closed my eyes so I wouldn't see Bob lying there. "This can't be happening. This can't be happening. This can't be." "You really killed him, huh, Johnny?" "Yeah." His voice quavered slightly. "I had to. They were drowning you, Pony. They might have killed you. They had a blade. They were going to beat me up. Like," I swallowed, "like they did before?" Johnny was quiet for a minute. "Yeah," he said, "like they did before." Johnny told me what had happened. "They ran when I stabbed him. They all ran." One moment. This is to them. Sophia, what's up?
I don't think you understand
Which is the thing?
that.
Yes, you did.
For sure.
It's on my desk.
So I didn't lose it.
You did not.
Okay.
Sit down. You good?
Also, I hurt myself really
I'm sorry to hear that part.
bad, and I feel numb.
Um,
Inside.
Oh, okay. I thought like the hurting yourself being numb would be a good part there. No. A panic was rising in me as I listened to Johnny's quiet voice go on and on. "Johnny!" I nearly screamed. "What are we going to do? They put you in the electric chair for killing people." I was shaking. "I want a cigarette. I want a cigarette. I want a cigarette." We had smoked our last pack. "I'm scared, Johnny. What are we going to do?" Johnny jumped up and dragged me up by my sweatshirt. He shook me. "Calm down, Pony Boy. Get a hold of yourself." I hadn't realized I was screaming. I shook loose. Okay, I'm okay now." Johnny looked around, slapping his pockets nervously. Okay, we gotta get out of here. We're gonna get somewhere. We're gonna run away. The police will be here soon." I was trembling, and it wasn't all from the cold. But Johnny, except for the fact that his hands were twitching, looked as cool as Derry ever had. "We'll need money, maybe a gun, and a plan." Money? A gun? A plan? Where in the world do we get those things? Dally, Johnny said with finality. Dally will get us out of here. I heaved a sigh. Why hadn't I thought of that? But I never thought of anything. Dallas Winston could do anything. Where can we find him? I think at Buck Merrill's place. There's a party over there tonight. Dally said something about it this afternoon. Buck Merrill was Dally's rodeo partner. He was the one who'd gotten Dally the job as a jockey for the Slash J. Buck raised a few quarter horses and made most of his money on fixed races and a little bootlegging. I was under strict orders from both dairy and soda not to get caught within 10 miles of this place, which was dandy with me. I didn't like Buck Merrill. He was a tall, lanky cowboy with blonde hair and buck teeth, or he used to be buck tooth before he had the front two knocked out in a fight. He was out of it. He dug Hank Williams. How gross can you get? That's where I'm going to have to stop with you. So it's on page 58. Your homework for me is just to finish out the rest of chapter 4. Either reading it yourself, or if you want to do audiobook, you're welcome to do audiobook. The audiobook is me reading it to you, if that helps you out at all. If you like listening to my voice, you're more than welcome to. But that's all I have. What? About 10 more pages. And this is where we start getting to the exciting part of the book. This is not the first death. This is not the first big thing that's going to happen. But that'll be for next week. Oh, if any of you read ahead, you cannot tell people what happens in the book.